This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello there everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we chat about whatever the hell we want to, quite frankly. And today I am joined by a member of the Doctor Who community, both on social media and on YouTube. I'm joined by Ferb on Who, or as I know him, as Lewis. How you doing, man?
No, call me only Ferb on Who.
Okay,
no
problem.
We're not on that level yet.
First step.
Yeah, so please call me Lewis. I've had people call me Ferb in real life, and I find it very weird. But hello, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invite.
No problem. Happy for you to be here. And, well, starting on that, I've just got to ask, where did the name Ferb on Who come from then? For your was that something that started with your YouTube channel, or does this go further back?
It goes a way back, a long way back. So
yeah.
Ferb is from where you would think it is, which is Phineas and Ferb.
Great show.
Kids animated. It's a great show. I think it's on Netflix if you want to go and watch it now. Oh no, yeah. Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Go and. It's still funny. It's still good. Anyway, I'm just revealing already that I watch children's TV.
Hey, it's stuff we grew up on, man. It's cool. Nostalgia
Exactly.
gives us an out of anything. But sorry, go
on. So we were trying to come up with, me and my sister, an Xbox gamer tag. You remember those?
Oh yeah.
For my brand new Xbox 360, which probably dates this to like 2006 or
Mate,
something.
You're speaking my era, but please, by all means.
And we thought it was very funny at that time to. We really liked the character Ferb, particularly because he didn't say anything. In the show, or said one line. So we called the Xbox gamer tag was Ferb is fit 1 2 3, which we thought was very funny as 5 and 8 year olds or whatever we were.
Sure.
And then like I said online, everyone would just call me Ferb because obviously the name is too long.
Yeah.
And it just kept going on, and then there was a YouTube channel which I'm not going to say the name of a long time ago, and it's just stuck the entire way through for all sorts of different social medias. And so I'm just Ferb now. I don't have a choice.
That's mad. That's so fun. Because I mean, for as long as I've known you and we've chatted before, like I have always wondered. I was like, I wonder where Ferb comes from. But there you go. People listening, you've heard the origins of
Exactly.
the Ferb on Who name, and I completely understand about the Xbox gamer tag. When I got mine, this is so embarrassing. So I wanted to be, and I don't know where this came from. I wanted to be Kick-Ass Ads 118. Which I thought,
Wow.
as like a 12, 13-year-old, I was like, that's a pretty solid name. It's punchy, it's kick-ass, and 118 I think was that old. Do you remember like the 118 adverts with the men?
118. Yeah. I thought I was gonna.
Yeah.
I was thinking, why would you want to include that? But...
I know a lot of my mates had it in their gamer tag, so I was like, oh well, I've got to have 118 in it as well. When it was like Call of Duty clans and stuff, and like you had to have the clan. So I wanted that, but of course Xbox and Microsoft, seeing the word ass, were like, no, like that's a naughty word. And what I should have done is the easier route. I should have taken the two S's of ass and made them $signs. But I didn't because I was a dumb kid. So instead,
or a 4 for the A. 4
exactly.
for the A would have worked as well.
So many options, you see. And instead I just decided, I'll just be Kick Ads 118, which it's not the same. It doesn't have the same punch.
No.
So that got me like a bit of stick from my mates, been like, oh yeah, what a name. And I just never changed it. So yeah, I mean, it's defunct now. So before anyone tries, no, you can't add me on Xbox 360. I don't play it anymore. Don't have Xbox Live either. But so I know what you mean. I think that was just a generational thing, wasn't it? Everyone wanted a name that was like, or we thought sounded cool or like edgy or funny. And now we all look back and we're like, oh God.
The thing is, for those unaware, I don't know if it's the case anymore, but it cost you a lot of money to change your name.
It did. Wasn't it like 800 Microsoft points, which was like, how much was that?
it was like 15-20 quid or something like that.
Which is
change your
crazy.
name, which, as a kid, you're not going to do that, and you can't convince your parents to give you the money for that, you know.
Yeah.
So once you've made your bad decision once, that's it. You're screwed.
That's it. You're stuck. I mean, it's mental, isn't it? Like now on Twitter, you can change your display name. Like imagine if you had to pay to change your Twitter display name. Like that'd be. It's how they got away with it. Like you say, for 15 quid for a name change is unreal. But alas,
Microsoft for you.
Those,
I think both of us did well because we didn't put XX at the start and the end of our gamer tag.
That's true. So... I was tempted, I must admit, but I thought, nah, I can't be doing with the X's. And it was always one small X, then a big X, and then another small X. Where did all these things come? Like, it's so weird, isn't it? Like, where did this start?
It's a good question. But we're not smart enough to answer it on this podcast. That's a deeper.
Or you modern kids with your Nintendo Switches and your PS5s that no one actually owns because no one can actually buy one. I mean, I don't know how much of like into the gaming scene you are now, but I think that whole thing with the PS5 is crazy at the minute. The whole, you know, Sony's like, oh, we sold 10 million, and everyone's like, did you? Have you really?
Well, 10 million across the world isn't that many, is it? You know,
I suppose
that's
not.
Compared to the population, that's one every like 1,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, that's not correct maths, by the way. Don't fact check that.
No,
I know that's not right.
Yeah.
I know someone that has an Xbox One.
Oh, right.
Because there was a whole thing around that as well, wasn't there?
There was.
Not Xbox One, Xbox X. Is that what it's called? The new one?
The one that looks like an old PC tower, basically. That one.
Yeah, massive brick.
Yeah.
But there was the whole thing with that was meant to set on fire. Someone put a vape through it or something to make it look like it was smoking. All sorts of.
Well, that person's
was
just a moron, quite frankly. I mean, that's just damn.
Exactly.
But yeah, modern gaming, eh? But I mean, I didn't think we'd get on to modern gaming, but there you go. That's the nature of this podcast. But just going back then to yourself as a creator. So you started the current YouTube channel you have, Ferb on Who, in, well, the first video, or as I always say, the first public video, because, you know, people might private stuff or unlist stuff, comes from July 2019, so not all that long ago. And I believe it was the infamous Doctor Who, but it's out of context, and he's already chuckling.
Yes.
Yeah. So was that the first video for the Ferb on Who channel, or are there others that have since been wiped out, privated, etc.?
I only have one private video.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if that came just before or just after that one, but pretty much that's my first proper video. And it's very interesting actually, because you look at it now and I don't know what it's on 150,000 views or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
I uploaded that and just forgot it existed, or I just did it for a laugh because I'd seen a few of those kind of videos online, and and then maybe 5 months later, because it was on about 100 views or 50 views or something like that.
Sure.
For all that time, and I'd just forgotten it existed and moved on with my life. And then 5 months later, suddenly it's on 1,000 views, and then 3,000 views, and I don't know where it came from. I guess someone found it funny and shared it, and it just snowballed like that. But it was quite interesting. It went from nothing to just and now those first couple are on about 150,000 each, I think.
I was going to say, because you made a few of them. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, you know, I think a lot of us would probably do the same. And they are good. It's so funny when you look at it, because, a lot of those scenes out of context are really weird. Like, the one that always stood out to me, because I rewatched some today, it's the scene from Planet of the Ood, when he just starts, like, vomiting out. If you just showed that to someone, it's like, oh my god, what kind of show is Doctor Who? Like, something really dodgy. But what inspired you to make that video then? As you say, was it just you'd seen someone, you wanted to like do your own spin on it?
I've been making videos on various now privated or deleted channels for a long time about all sorts of different things. My first ever video came October the 31st, 2012 on my first ever YouTube channel. So I've been around for quite a while doing different stuff. So whenever I vaguely have an interest in making something, I just make it because it just seems pretty natural to me.
Yeah.
And I think I literally just was, I can't remember which episode, but I was just watching an episode of Doctor Who and thought that would be really weird out of context, and it just went from there. And then, yeah, it just naturally snowballed. There's a bit of a running joke in them as well now. Not that I've made one in a while, but of the boom moment with Sophie Aldred's ace shouting boom in Battlefield.
Yes.
And the way it's directed is very odd. And so
it is a bit odd, isn't it?
you don't have to even take it out of context for it to be weird. And I think that's where the best clips come from in those videos, is the ones that actually are quite weird even in context.
Yeah, there's loads of moments, especially in Classic Who, like that. I mean,
Sure.
funnily enough, the day yesterday before we're recording this, I decided to rewatch The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. So from around that same era. Great story, absolutely. And I think it's the cliffhanger for part 3. It's when... Is it part 3? I can't remember. One of the cliffhangers, it's where Mags has just, turned into a werewolf and she's, like, threatening the Doctor and the Captain's, like, taunting him and all that. And there's a great shot of Mags's face, like, in close-up, with all the makeup and the teeth and the eye, and it looks great. And you think that's your cliffhanger shot right there. But then for some reason it cuts away to a weird close-up of Sylvester sort of looking off camera, but sort of like doing this. Like he's morbidly disgusted at something. If you're listening on audio, you're missing out. But it's a very odd shot. It just looks very bizarre. And you just think, why didn't you end on the... I mean, I guess the classic example are nearly all the cliffhangers in Trial of a Time Lord, which infamously are just zoom-ins of poor Colin Baker's face. So you could probably take all those out of context, just show them in sequence. I'm like, what is going on?
There is actually it's not one of the out of context videos, but one of the videos, YouTube poop, if you want to call it, that I made, where I did kind of put those in, but just at random moments through the video. So every minute or so, you get one of those Colin Baker zooms. But I don't think I've done the one from The Greatest Show, so I might have to nick that now. That's some inspiration.
No, feel free. As I say, it's just... I mean, the cliffhanger's fine in itself. It's just a very odd shot to finish on, I think. It's just like you had this great shot of Mags, and then you cut away to poor Sylv sort of doing that with his face, and you're like, okay. You're
spot on in... what you were saying about the difference between classic and modern Who with the out of context videos. With the classic ones, you can just take moments of like bad special effects or bad direction and just put it in there. The modern ones, you do have to actually take it out of context to make it funny. Most of the time. But yeah, the boom just became a running joke. People loved it in the comments. I just put the clip in and I didn't do anything clever with it. And then just so many comments were just the words boom in all caps. And I thought people find that funny, so I've got to include it so it's in all of the out of context videos somewhere now.
I like that. It's a running gag.
Exactly.
And I like what you said earlier as well about how making content for you is like a very natural thing. Like, you have something you want to make and then you make it. Obviously, like you said, you've had other channels that are now privated or deleted, which is completely valid. But could you tell us like what sort of videos you used to make? Or
Sure. The very first video was called Minecraft Hardcore Parkour.
Oh, a Minecraft video. I see.
And it was made on a software called EasyVid, which some YouTubers of a while back might be familiar with. It's a free to use software. It's like OBS, but much, much worse.
Right.
And it's horrible to edit with. How a 11-year-old me managed to work with it, I don't know. I'm impressed with myself. But essentially what I did was I did this parkour, but I couldn't do it in one go. For anyone that doesn't know what Minecraft parkour is, this bit's going to be very confusing, by the way. Okay. I'm not going to explain it.
You're going to have to all go and Google that whilst you're listening.
Yeah. And I couldn't do it, so I would just cut at the right moment to make it look like I did this whole parkour in one go. And that's all the video was. It was awful. And so it was... At the time, I was, people, they're still going now, but people like Captain Sparkles and Jacksepticeye and I don't think he'd come about much yet, but they did lots of different games. So they play Minecraft and Happy Wheels, if you remember that one.
Yes, of course,
and things like that. So I would just make videos playing those sorts of things with my high-pitched child's voice. So no one would want to watch it, but I just enjoy making it.
Yeah.
Then it went into wrestling content eventually. I had a separate channel all about that for a little while.
Yeah.
Which I think is still public. So if anyone really wants to, dig, they can try their best.
If you can find it, yeah.
If you can guess the name and find it, then it's up there. But just anything really, anything I was interested in. So yeah, a bit of video games, a bit of wrestling, a bit of football, and now on to Doctor Who.
Nice. Oh no, I like that. I admire that. The wrestling channel's not called WW Ferb by any chance, is it?
That's better than the actual answer.
Oh right. So it just popped in my head. I was like, oh my god, what if that's the name? But alas, yeah, you'll have to keep hunting, folks. That's a big challenge. So Doctor Who then, like on the current channel on Ferb on Who, even though it's only been around for just over 2 years now, you've managed to cover quite a lot of different kinds of videos on the channel. Like, you know, you started off with the out of context stuff, like sort of meme based, like almost YouTube poop style. But you've also done like rankings, tier lists, podcast, reactions. So you've covered a lot of ground. For you yourself as the creator, is there one video or a series of videos that serve as like a particular highlight for you personally?
Definitely the reaction videos that we do now. The lockdown reactions, as they're called. It's not really a fitting name anymore because we're not in lockdown, but I think maybe the next one we'll have to change that. We'll have to come up with a new name. But for me, I think it's partially because of how long they take to make and how much effort has to go into them. I mean, we're talking about maybe 15, 20 hours of work for each one of them. So there's a sense of pride automatically in that, regardless of how good they are. But I do really like them, and you can tell from the viewing numbers, but also the interactions, that people like those more than everything else.
Fun.
Yeah, I should say the out of context stuff, because obviously that's the ones that people like the most.
Yes.
Given the huge number of views compared to everything else and all the likes and comments. But yeah, the reaction videos for me, if someone asked me, what should I watch on your channel? I like a good tier list or review or discussion or whatever. They're always fun. But to me, those are easy videos that anyone could whip up in a few hours, and you can find them. You can find them somewhere else. You don't have to come to my channel to get a .2 tier list. But you do
I hear
have
you.
to.
It's like
you have to come to my channel for those lockdown reactions.
No, I hear you. Yeah, because I guess like with top tens and tier lists, it's like you are getting different opinions depending on which channel you go to. But I get what you mean. It's like the format itself is quite familiar.
Yeah.
It's been done sort of thing where. No, I was very much the same. Like with I do the series on viewing figures, which to my knowledge, I don't think anyone else had done sort of in the depth that I do it to. So yeah, I get what you mean about sort of finding your little like niche within the Who community, which if anyone wants to try, is actually easier said than done. Like because obviously there's so many niches you could delve into, but a lot of them have just already been done and done well as well. Don't get me wrong. Like there's loads of great creators out there who have done niche Doctor Who things well, like Josh Snares, for example, with his missing episode stuff. Like that stuff's great, and it's nice to see. So with the lockdown reactions, then were you inspired at all by the viewings that were happening on social media, the sort of Doctor Who lockdown watch-alongs, as they were?
It's a good question. I'm not sure what came first.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I could have been chronologically. I think I'm not sure what I was inspired by. I think partially it was looking at reaction videos, .2 reaction videos that exist at the moment, and not being very happy with them myself. There's not to knock the people that make them, and there's an audience for it that really like them. But it wasn't for me, and I thought there's a more interesting way of doing this. Because I like the idea of watching somebody. To me, it's a very similar appeal to watching a gaming walkthrough, as they used to be called, or a let's play. It is, you're kind of just watching somebody else react to something that you already like or you already know about. But yeah, that was partially it, and I was thinking, is there a better way of doing this? It's obviously using the template of Gogglebox to a degree, which is on Channel 4, I think. So that was a bit of an inspiration. But I don't know if it's been so long, I'm not sure exactly which one came first.
I'd have to cross dates. I think the first lockdown like social media one, I want to say was the 21st of March last year, because it was Day of the Doctor, wasn't it? Was the first one, I think.
I'm going to have to Google my own YouTube channel.
Yeah. Well, I've got it up myself, actually, just in case I needed to look back. So let me have a look when that could have been. See, this is was it the Rose one?
Rose was first, so that was the 9th of May. So that was
Oh,
our
okay.
9th of May last year.
Oh, maybe it was a subconscious thing. Maybe it wasn't an active thing. But yeah, I mean, it was lockdown. We were all doing various different things, weren't we, during that crazy time? Which is
well, exactly. Yeah. You have a captive audience as well. When you go to somebody at that period in time and say, "Do you want to do this?" They've got a lot less reasons to say no.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can kind of force people into doing these videos, and they're genuine. People were genuinely bored. So if you went to do you want to film yourself watching some Doctor Who for an hour? Most people go on then.
Yeah, I think it was, in a way, obviously, like, with the pandemic and lockdown, it brought a lot of bad things. No one's denying that. But I think in terms of, like, YouTube and for creatives, it gave people a chance to maybe work with people they'd wanted to for a while, or people they thought they'd never get otherwise. Like, part of the reason why I started this podcast, in fact, in August of last year, was partly, like you say, it's lockdown, and I thought, well, what better time to try and reach out to people and fill an hour of their day, and it's I think it worked that way for a lot of people in lockdown, so I think that was a benefit, really. But yeah, so what was have you got more reactions in the pipeline? You're still working on them?
Yeah, we've gotten to a really nice comfortable point where we've basically got the same group of people each time. If you all you have to do is scroll through the channel and see the thumbnails to see that for the first 4 or 5 episodes, you've got different people every time, bar 1 or 2 kind of regulars.
Sure.
But we've gotten to a point now where I think there's some people we've got in that have really enjoyed them and are just happy to keep doing them. So we're at a good pace where we're just making one say every 2 months, and we're rolling through series 2 at the moment. We just released The Girl in the Fireplace a few days ago, which might be my favourite one that we've done so far.
Nice.
Really enjoyed that. It sounds stupid, but the copyright rules are very ridiculous.
Yes.
For anyone that doesn't know, that doesn't make videos, it's very difficult to figure out how to get around those. The best way of doing it. And we've gotten to a point now where we can, the best way we can. So you'll notice if you watch that one, there are a lot of longer clips that make the whole thing a more cohesive thing to watch.
Oh, that's good. You're absolutely right. It's so difficult because even though there's rough guidelines, but they're not really that clear on, obviously we cite fair use, which is a valid cause. We're transforming the content, like reactions with commentary, or in my case, I'll use clips, but I'll be talking underneath them. You can't hear the audio, so therefore it's transformative. But YouTube, half the time, or I should say the people who strike the videos, half the time either just ignore that completely. And I think the problem is the power is with the claimant. There's no middle, YouTube doesn't act as a middle influence to sort of judge the situation. It's just the claimant claims you, and I could say, oh, but look, fair use, and be absolutely justified. But because they're the one with the finger over the button, they could just be like, nah, we'll do that. And it happens so often. I think we've all seen it happen so often to creators big and small. And it's just, to put it bluntly, I think it's an abuse of power, really. In my opinion, to some degree.
Absolutely. I'm not going to whip out the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988 and turn this into some, I don't want to get the show on a too boring start. But you're right, there's a problem there. There's a distinct problem there. And I've been on the phone with people at BBC Studios. And gone that far. And they can do what they want, essentially, which is true of a lot of the internet. I think the more that you try and do anything of significance on the internet, the more you realise that it really is a wild west. And that's mostly because the people that pass laws and acts in Congress or in the UK in Parliament are very old and very detached from current society. And the internet they don't know about it enough to sort it out properly. So really, it is it is the Wild West. You can just do whatever you want, and those it really means that there are rules, but there aren't laws for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think you're right about that detachment. I mean, do you remember that whole thing a few years ago? What was it, like Article 13 in the EU Parliament that was set to... That was a whole thing about copyright, and it would basically give claimants or even like more power to... But that just sort of fell through, I think. I haven't heard anything about that in a good few years.
What tends to happen is they raise a really stupid idea because they don't know it's stupid. Someone tells them it's stupid and they drop it.
Yeah, probably.
It happened in America as well. They were trying to essentially privatize the internet.
Right.
Right. And they were trying that for a couple of years in Congress, and eventually it's just dissipated.
Yeah.
Because they realised it was an awful idea that was never going to work. So hopefully it won't get any worse, but equally it means that it's possibly not going to get much better either.
Yeah, for sure. And I think where I stand with it now, you know, like the BBC, for example, if they want to monetize the videos because I'm using their clips, I'm like, okay, you know, fair enough, that it's your content. But it's the ones where it's like your video's blocked in all countries. You're just sort of like, okay, come on, like, is this video really gonna do you know what I mean? Because I think the main thing is aside from the visibility, is the monetization. And I think more creators would be fine with just, well, not fine, they'd probably still fight back, but, you know, they'd be more accepting if it was just the monetization. But we've seen recently, you know, there's this huge thing of companies issuing these sweeping bans, you know, on videos saying, oh, you just can't be viewed anywhere. I think that's what hurts more, because you've put the time and effort into this video, in some cases, like, you know, you said hours and hours, and then all of a sudden for someone to just go, nah, not going to be seen by anyone. It's just like, well, how, you know, that's not giving anyone a fair chance, really.
I think the most ludicrous part, you're absolutely right, the most ludicrous part about all of it is that Doctor Who in particular is a show that survives solely from its fan base.
Sure.
It's got such a passionate and creative fan base, and there are bad parts of it, sure, but even the bad parts are still people that are helping to prop up the show. And to then be blocking videos which are essentially promoting the show, that when we have these years which are becoming increasingly more frequent, where there's just no Doctor Who on TV, the stuff that's on YouTube is one of the only things that keeps people excited about the show and in the loop on what's going on. So to be essentially, you know, biting the hand that feeds you and just showing such lack of interest, I think the thing you have to remember is that there's a difference between the copyright department at BBC Studios and the people that make Doctor Who. You know, we're talking about two totally separate groups of people. It's not Chris Chibnall or somebody sitting there being horrible to the fans, but it's still BBC, you know, and they make so much money from it as well, and to mistreat your own fans to that degree, and as you say, when you put so much time and effort into it, to have it blocked is just, and it has happened to me before, is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem, and we can only hope as the years go on that it, you know, obviously, I want to be fair to the copyright holders, of course, but there needs to be a greater understanding from the creators' side of view as well, I think. I feel it's just sort of swept under the rug, but yeah, so,
I don't want to be fair to the copyright holders, by the way.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I'll be the undiplomatic side of the...
Hey, you have your stance, I'll have mine.
We can go to war.
Enough. We can go to war. Well, one thing, I don't know if you want to discuss it here, is that soon, or in the near future, you have a new scripted series coming up, I believe.
Well, it's in the works.
It's in the works, yeah. Obviously,
we do, yeah.
Yeah, feel free. I don't know how much you want to reveal at this stage. It's completely up to you, but...
It's a good point. It's not something I've thought about how much I would want to give away about it. I will say that we're working on something that I think hasn't been done in the Doctor Who community for sure, and probably hasn't really been done at all on YouTube. And yeah, it's a scripted series, which is quite strange, I think, for this area. It's a comedy, and it will hopefully be starring the other man on your screen.
Hello. Yes.
Along with myself and a couple of other great cast members. Yeah, and it's we've written the pilot episode already. We're going to shoot that, and it's going to be I think we're planning on 6 episodes, but we don't know for sure yet. But I don't think I want to reveal too much more than that. It's a comedy. It's it's about Doctor Who, but it's not. If your grandma's asking about it that doesn't watch Doctor Who, she can still watch this show, and find it hopefully funny and engaging. But it is about I'd say it's about Doctor Who in the same way that Plebs is about the Roman Empire. It's set in the Roman Empire, but that's about the extent of it. It's just a comedy beyond that, you know.
Well, there you go. Watch this space. I thought I'd just sprinkle that in there, but yes, I'll be involved as well. But yeah, I think it's something that listeners will really enjoy, especially if you're a Doctor Who fan. But like Lewis said, you don't have to be. You don't have to be a Who fan to enjoy it. So yeah, keep that space watched. But speaking of Doctor Who, come on then, Lewis. How did you get into this crazy little sci-fi show? Because I feel everyone has a different way in almost, don't they? Everyone has like a different story.
Sure. Well, I was 4 years old when... When did the first episode air? December time? What was it?
Oh, it was... I think Rose was March 2005, sometime around there. Yeah,
I was 3 years old.
Oh, blimey.
When the show
That's
started.
aging me a little bit, but yeah. So.
But I did watch the first episode on broadcast as a little 3-year-old, purely because both of my parents are fans, particularly my mum. Always watched it as a kid, John Pertwee and then Tom Baker. And she would, you know, do all the usual hiding behind the sofa. She always tells me the story interestingly. I'd like to know if there's anyone else that's heard this from their parents or has the experience himself. She actually found the title sequence scary. That was the
I've heard this. Yeah.
I don't know if she means because of the music or because of, you know, John Pertwee's face or body floating through the... I don't know what it was. Or maybe the apprehension or the anticipation of what was going to come in the episode. I'm not sure. And
that's odd, that.
I think because of that, it was just like, well, Doctor Who's back on. We've got kids. We've got to show them it. And I just loved it instantly. And I've just watched every single episode on broadcast since. So
wow, from 3 years old onwards. That's impressive. Impressive. Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's just
so
even, way through.
So even when you were going through, say, like the Eccleston and the Tennant years, then we're talking, you know, you're like 3, 4, 5, 6, still quite a young age.
Yeah.
To your memory, then, because obviously that's probably the time in your life when you're probably going to be, you know, properly scared of something the most because it's all new. Do you remember was there any particular moments or episode that you remember back then were like really scary for you?
Well, see, as you said, at that age, I was scared of every single episode.
Right, bless you.
But I'm writing a horror film at the moment, which, so that's because of that, to get inspiration, I've been watching some horror films, reading horror novels, and they still scare me now. So I'm not good with that sort of stuff. So everything creeped me out. I'm trying to remember I remember that for me personally, I think the Matt Smith era was more scary than earlier on. Okay. So I actually remember more specific examples of being scared by stuff, even though I was older in the Matt Smith era.
That's valid.
I remember specifically that I saw the trailer for Night Terrors at the end of the previous episode. I don't remember what the previous episode was, but and the dolls, obviously the peg dolls in Night Terrors. And I remember actually turning to my parents and saying, "I'm not watching that one."
Oh, God,
I did watch that one.
Yeah.
And it was fine, but I'm trying to think. I remember Midnight always scared me. The moment where she's kind of huddled in the corner and not looking at them yet. The anticipation of that always scared me. I never found the Daleks or the Cybermen scary, even as a 4 or 5 year old kid.
That's so interesting because, of course, those. Well, I guess some of this generation, but those were always the ones in the classic series, wasn't it? Where people would say, oh yeah, Daleks and the Cybermen run behind the sofa, all that sort of thing. But I do know a lot of people who, even as kids, you know, would say, oh yeah, I'm not that bothered by the Daleks and the Cybermen. They liked them, but they weren't like scared of them.
No, they're more like action villains than sort of horror villains, if you like. And I don't know if that's because in comparison to other villains of the modern series, they're tame. or maybe I already had a more of a knowledge of them. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, I think I was like that, like because after getting into the Eccleston series, then I started to learn about the classic series and stuff. So I already, I'd learned about the Daleks and the Cybermen. So then when the Cybermen appeared in series 2, I was like, oh, I know what these are. I'll buy the action figure and all that. But as an adult, I actually find that two-parter in series 2 quite chilling, because obviously there's a lot of focus on like the body horror element and what it means to be a Cyberman, and I think that's a scary do you know what I mean? Like that's a chilling concept.
Yeah,
and it's a shame. I think it doesn't get played on in. Well, it has recently, but it doesn't get played on enough. I think
those kind of more intelligent horrors, psychological horrors, go over your head as a kid.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're not gonna really pick up on that. You might think it's gross, but you're not really gonna be haunted by when he's picking the brains out of the dead Cyberman in Age of Steel. Yeah, that's gonna affect you more as an adult. So it is the more obvious stuff, the jump scares and the creepy looking scarecrows or whatever that get you as a kid. On the Cybermen, I don't know. I think it has been done quite a lot. I think we've had two-part stories that have already delved into that. I'm not quite sure how much more you could go into it without retreading the same ground, to be honest.
I suppose so, yeah. I maybe it's the taste of like some of the like Moffat era Cyberman stories use the Cybermen a lot as just sort of like cannon fodder, and which is, they can be a good like army, but I think when it happened, like, again and again, it's sort of like, okay, like there are more to these guys than just being an army and then being cannon fodder. I think that's maybe where that frustration comes from. But I do see your point. Yeah, if you did it every time, I think you'd be retreading different steps. But I don't know. I still think there is a bit more to be explored, at least on TV. But yeah,
I think
who knows?
at the moment, there's certainly more room. I don't know in terms of the body horror, but I think there's certainly more room to delve into just the technology concept. I think Rise of Cybermen did it very well at the time. The scene, for example, where everyone has their earpieces in and they get delivered their daily news and then their daily joke and everybody laughs at the same time. That's really great dystopian writing. Yes. And I think in our modern day, where we're more entrenched in mobile phones and Zoom and all sorts of different types of technology, there's definitely potential for more social stories. I think, ignoring all the sort of fake controversy around political stuff in the recent years of the Whittaker era, there actually isn't much social science fiction writing in the recent series, in my opinion. There's some stuff about political issues, but I think Russell T Davies was the best, actually, or did it the most, talking about social issues, whether that's like the Slovene and talking about the government there, or talking about technology with Rise of Cybermen, or obesity and adipose and how that's abused. I would quite like to see more of that, to be honest, and I think the Cybermen are a perfect example to do that.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I feel, for me personally, like just using Series 12 as an example, I'd argue maybe there are some like social writing cues in there, but it feels more like on a personal level rather than, like you say, like, about the government or wider things, if that makes sense. Like, there's like Can You Hear Me, where you're dealing with people's like inner thoughts. Ryan's got his thing going on, and so has Yaz, and do you know what I mean? So I'd argue it's like it feels. I get me. Maybe it's not as pronounced, and maybe it should be going forward. But just I think what we've gotten so far, in my opinion, anyway, feels like more of a like closed in chat about. It's more about like the individual rather than the bigger picture, I guess. But it's what works for different people. Like I personally found Series 12 quite fun for the most part. I think I don't need to make big secret that there's a lot of people who didn't find it fun, which is, that's completely fair enough. That's okay. What have you thought about this? Because of course, at the time we're recording, it's been announced that Jodie and Chris Chibnall are leaving. Again, we don't know their replacement, and sod's law, I bet you when this comes out, it would have been announced. But at the time we're recording, it's still unknown. But as this era's drawing to a close, we've still got Series 13, we've still got the various specials. What have you thought of this era so far, and how would you want, if you were in charge, want to see it sort of close out?
Good question. Well, for the first part of the question, I thought Series 12 was a huge improvement on Series 11 for me. When I say words like better and improvement, I mean personally speaking. I don't personally believe there's such a thing as good and bad in TV and film. Objectively good, I think, is nonsense.
Sure.
So just to be clear when I'm saying that, I'm just saying
no,
of
course.
opinion.
Of course.
Yeah, Series 12 I thought was a lot better. I thought the reintroduction of story arc elements made it a lot more interesting just for a fan like me. I'm aware that someone that was only a casual fan or not really a fan at all would have found some of the Timeless Child stuff not only confusing but very boring.
Sure.
Sort of essentially the finale is 40 minutes of standing still, talking about Gallifrey, which for me I was on the edge of my seat because I'm interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But from a purely TV writing point of view, which is what I do as a study and as a profession, it's not top grade stuff in my opinion. But I really enjoyed all of that stuff, and I thought having returning monsters, and I thought it seems strange to me. This is one of the main things that keeps coming into my head when people ask me about what I think about the series. Is it very much seems from a marketing point of view that they're putting out this message that Chibnall had a very clear plan of what he wanted to do with the 3 series.
Yeah.
We heard the term 5-year plan, and now more recently with the announcement that him and Jodie are leaving, we found out that they actually made a pact to leave after 3 series.
Yes.
So it's very much clear that he had 5 years, 3 series all planned out. But then when you watch the show, it really doesn't feel like it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt, was the 5-year plan, was that because I can't remember, was that a direct quote from Chibnall, or was that...
That was actually a Chibnall quote, yes.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
But he gave no more information than that, just that he had a 5-year plan, which a lot of people were thinking, well, that's 2018, that takes us to 2023, so that must be the 60th anniversary.
Right, okay, yeah.
Which we found out now is not the case, because he'll be gone in late next year, I think. So
yes, that was it, yeah.
But it feels very much like Series 11 is trying one thing, and then Series 12 tries something at the total other end of the spectrum, because we go from a series with no story arc, I think no returning monsters, or returning characters, and then we go to Series 12 and we have returning monsters, we have Captain Jack returning, the Master returning, we have loads of story arc, loads of lore. It feels like you've just gone from there to there in the space of one series, and if that's a plan, that's a weird plan.
Yeah, sure. And I saw a lot of people sort of compare the shift in a way to Sylvester McCoy's first 2 series. How season 24 is very, not necessarily in terms of, well, in a way in terms of story arc, but how it's very obviously very comedic and very light on its feet, which again some people love it. I actually like it more when I watched it recently than I used to. But then obviously season 25 is a lot more like serious about itself. It's a lot darker. It starts setting up that thing of the Doctor being like a mysterious manipulator. It starts putting things in place for Ace. And I guess I sort of see what they mean. Like back then, I imagine you watch it in 1987 and think, "Oh, this is like a pantomime." And then in 1988, it's like, "Whoa, okay, we've gone the complete opposite direction." Would you agree? It's maybe sort of like that how people are finding it. That sort of extreme opposite shift in a way.
Yeah, and I think maybe the main difference there is that you also have a shift in character, which I don't think is the case in what we've got with Series 11 and 12. I do think that the Doctor's character and the Companions' characters are consistent, so you wouldn't feel so much of a jolt watching it as you would do watching series back with Sylvester McCoy. But yeah, from a tonal point of view, it's very similar, and I think you can... In that case, I think it's because there's changes going on behind the scenes. I mean, we all know how turbulent it was back then.
Yes.
And how much trouble they were having with the higher ups.
With just everything. Everything was
with
out
everything,
together.
literally everything. Yeah. Whereas here it seems to be very solid. I mean, the current head of programming or whatever the title is, Piers Wenger, was a producer, an executive producer on Doctor Who. So it seems like they're very much in favour of the show, and they always put out positive messages and about it. And it seemed like Chibnall was very much given free rein. So I think that's why it feels stranger. Given the context back then, you can see, I can see why it flipped from one extreme to the other. Here, it seems like it was just Chibnall's decision, which is a strange one. But, going back to your original question, I didn't really enjoy Series 11.
Sure.
But I have to say, in all honesty, that I haven't really solidly enjoyed the show for quite a long time anyway.
Okay.
There's been episodes from Series 6 to Series 9 that I've loved, but through that period of Series 6 to 9, there's a lot of episodes that I didn't like, and the whole way the show was being run I didn't really like. So it's not been a case for me where, you see a lot of people online saying, "I'll bring back Moffat, bring back Capaldi," and all this kind of stuff, which ironically they're the same people that were saying to get rid of them a few years ago. It's
a repeating cycle, unfortunately, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it always has happened, it's always gonna happen, and it's one of those sad things. But so, like you say, Series 6 to 9, that was really like where you say they started to not necessarily enjoy everything. One thing I've asked guests before, and I know it happened to me. Do you think part of it coincided with like a shift into like being a teenager? Because I remember when I went into my teenage years, which was in the Matt Smith era, I still watched the show every week, and I still enjoyed it on like a base level at least. But I found myself being very like increasingly like cynical about the show. And whereas in the RTD era, granted I was a bit younger, but I just sort of, sat there and absorbed it for what it was. And I had a great time. So do you think that happened? So not saying it's the main reason, but do you think maybe that happened somewhat with you as well, or were there other things? Like, what was the shift basically for you? Do you know what I mean? What made it for you where it stopped being a thrill every week to it being like, oh well, I've watched that and it's not something I necessarily like?
I don't think it was to do with age, to be honest, because I was still very young when Series 6 was rolling in. And I've always been a massive nerd. There was no period where that dropped off.
That's
where
fair, man.
I went.
I respect that.
I'm too. I never went. I'm too cool for this. I was always into lots of nerdy stuff, and I always have been. So there was never really any dip in enthusiasm for nerdy TV or anything at any point. I think it was just the show.
Okay.
The way that Moffat wrote his series, not necessarily his episodes, but his series, wasn't for me. And I think the reason I know that, and that it wasn't to do with the timing, is because I can go back and watch them now and I still get that same feeling.
Sure, yeah.
I can jump from Series 5 to Series 6 and I can feel that difference for me. There's still some brilliant stuff, don't get me wrong, and there was never a point where I was like, I'm going to stop watching Doctor Who.
Yeah.
There's so many great episodes in there. Like some of my favourite episodes, especially in the Capaldi era, like Mummy on the Orient Express,
great, yeah.
Heaven Sent.
Yes.
Just some of my favourite episodes ever in there. But just the overall writing of the characters and the story arcs, so that's something I'm really enjoying about the current show, is that it feels a lot less messy for me. Than it did back then. It feels a lot cleaner, a lot simpler, and that the stories aren't being bogged down in all of this conflict and story arc that I wasn't really into. Yeah,
I know a lot of people feel the Whittaker era has been like a nice sort of fresh start again, in the sense that a lot of maybe not in Series 12, but in Series 11, like a lot of the existing continuity wasn't thrown out the window, of course, but just wasn't relied on so much. I guess, again, it's sort of similar to what happened in the mid-80s around like Colin Baker's time, where there's Colin's great, but a lot of those stories it's like reference bingo, like, oh, what they gonna mention this week? Oh, it's like Tomb of the Cybermen. Oh, look, it's a picture of John Pertwee on the wall, wink wink nut. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. I think continuity references in a show like Doctor Who, again, just my personal opinion, is I think they work best when they are there but they're not on the nose, like Time Lash, again, John Pertwee on a wall and him going, oh, that was an adventure I had once, and with so that maybe is a bit too on the nose for like a casual viewer. But I don't know, maybe like a throwaway line, like one that always sticks out. I think it's in, is it the Woman Who Lived, with Maisie Williams, the second part of that two-parter. She mentions the Great Fire of London, and she goes, oh, that was you, wasn't it? And he goes, no, that was the Pteroleptals, which of course is a hark back to a classic story. but I felt like it wasn't. They didn't make this big thing of it. It was just they mentioned it and then they moved on. Do you know what I mean? So I think that works well. Like if you're a casual viewer, you go, "Oh, that sounds like an alien race." Cool. But if you're a fan, you can go, "Oh, I know what the." Do you know what I mean? I feel that's the best kind of continuity reference for me. But I know everyone's different. Everyone has their preferences. So with Series 12 then, which of course reintroduces, like you said, a lot of returning characters, returning monsters, established. Did you think all the continuity stuff was too much, too soon, or?
Well, I'm at a kind of an annoying headspace that I think a lot of people are that are involved in YouTube and that, where I'm over-analysing and because I'm a writer as well, I've got like another reason to be over-analysing and thinking about behind the scenes and what's the casual audience thinking about this? What's the hardcore fan thinking about? Which you shouldn't be doing when you're watching a pro. The only question you should have is, what am I thinking about this while you're watching something? But unfortunately, I try my best to shape those, but I can't. And that was one thought I had through Series 12 was, for someone that's not a big fan, this just doesn't make much sense. And there's no reason to be engaged in it either. I think you can get away with the Master, because I think pretty much everyone knows who the Master is, even, casual people. And even if you don't, like, he's clearly like an evil pantomime villain.
You get who the Master is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like all the Gallifrey stuff, and that being destroyed, like the scene where she's sort of standing outside the TARDIS, and it's that really pretty Auburn view, and everything's burning, and you can see it in the reflection in her eye. Looks great, and it's a big moment. But for someone that doesn't really watch the show or has never seen it before, it's like, there's no reason to care about that moment. It's not built up to at all. It's just like, there it is. And it just doesn't really make any sense. So unfortunately, I have that sort of playing in my head. For me,
that's valid. That's valid.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was all good. I'm a bit tired of Gallifrey personally, because it's been destroyed and undestroyed and destroyed and undestroyed at this point, And I'm like, I can't really I do know the lore. I know what happened, but like in my head, it's like, is everyone dead or not? I don't really. Wasn't everyone dead anyway? And
Yeah, it's a weird grey area now, isn't it? And yeah, maybe they could leave it for a few years or not. Who knows? But hey, Series 13. Who knows what's going to happen? It might all have been a lie. It might all have been for nothing. So
I would quite like that. Just from a boldness point of view by Chibnall to just go, yeah, no, I was just joking.
Could you imagine what social media would be like if
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Like
I would be sitting back just cracking my knuckles, just having a great time watching the chaos on Twitter.
Oh, the madness.
I would love that.
Oh, we'll have to see how it develops. But as said, at the time we're recording this, touch wood, it won't get announced before the episode's out. But we don't know who the 14th Doctor will be, and we don't know who the new showrunner will be. But I think it's only right to ask if you were in charge, have you got anyone you'd like immediately jump to for either role? Have you thought, I'd like to see them in the part or in the role?
Well, my long-term suggestion, which is someone I've been wanting to do it for absolutely ages, is Matthew Bainton. Who, for those unfamiliar, he's part of the Horrible Histories troupe.
He is.
And Ghosts more recently is what he's probably famous for at the moment. He was also he's been in lots of great stuff. He was in The Wrong Mans with James Corden, and he was in You, Me and the Apocalypse. It's a Sky original show from a few years ago. It's got a really brilliant cast in it. No one's seen it, so go and watch it. If anyone's listening to this now, because I feel really bad, because it was a great show and no one watched it to the point where they didn't make a second series.
Oh no.
So I'm sorry, you will be slightly disappointed when you get to the end of the first series and it leaves on a cliffhanger.
Oh no, it's like Class all over again.
Exactly. But it's a brilliant show, and it showed, because for anyone that is familiar with Matthew Bainton, the obvious question will probably be, well, can he act? In a serious role, because he's only done comedy. And to me, I'd say two things. One, watch that show, because there are serious moments in it and he's great. And two, so many comedy actors are just classically trained actors that are great at acting. I mean, we've seen it time and time again in just Doctor Who, Matt Lucas and Catherine Tate.
Absolutely.
And so many other guest stars as well. that you think, oh, can they do serious acting? Yeah, they can. And you see it all the time in all sorts of other shows, people making that jump over, and every time people go, I'm not sure if they can do serious acting, and pretty much every time it's proven that they can.
Yeah.
So for me, I think he's got a sort of kooky energy to him the Doctor needs. I think he could play a slightly cowardly version of the Doctor that we haven't seen in the modern series. We haven't seen yet. Patrick Troughton would be the obvious example. Or Colin Baker in the Twin Dilemma for a few minutes when he's cowering behind Perry.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think he'd be brilliant. He is also I think the Doctor needs to be funny as well. And obviously he can do that part of it. And I would quite like to see the kind of dashing, running around Doctor again that I don't think we've had since Matt Smith, really.
Sure.
Because Peter Capaldi obviously being older, and Jodie Whittaker in the way that her show's directed is very static. So it would be cool to see a Doctor running around a little bit more again, and I think he'd be great at that. I could see him in a old school Victorian get-up or something similar to what he wears in Ghosts.
No, good choice. It's funny you mention someone who has ties to horrible histories and ghosts, because a few weeks ago on this show we had Lee Binding, an illustrator who does the art for the Blu-rays and stuff, and when I asked him this same question, he said, oh, do you know what? He said, give the show running role to the whole Ghosts Horrible Histories team.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that'd be quite a cool, just with how Ghosts and Horrible Histories is, I was like, that could be quite cool, actually.
You know what? I'd be up for that.
Yeah. So
that's a brilliant.
There you go.
A brilliant suggestion.
Showrunners and Lee. But who's have you got a showrunner pick yourself? Anyone sprung to mind, or?
Other than myself.
Of course. We all want to run the show. So.
I don't know. I don't think anyone on the current show, or on Chibnall's run, has proved themselves enough where I would say yes, they should go and do it.
Okay.
Maybe Series 13 will change that, because we've got a few people that have written 1 or 2 episodes for. I can't remember the name of the woman that wrote The Haunting of Villa Diodati.
I think it's Maxine Alderton. I think.
Right, and she previously done script editing, I believe.
Yes,
in the previous series. Maybe if she has another really good episode in this series, I'd be able to go, oh, well, she can clearly write Doctor Who. I think she should do it. But I don't think there's anyone from that run. I wouldn't like to see, because Mark Gatiss comes up a lot, and Neil Gaiman comes up a lot.
I just don't think either of them would do it, really.
Well, I don't know. For the Mark Gatiss one, I think it would be too similar to Moffat's run. For me personally, I don't think it would be Doctor Who's always about doing something interesting, changing, moving, and I don't think that would be the right pick to do that. Neil Gaiman, he's very famously come out and basically said that both times he tried to write a Doctor Who episode, it went terribly wrong. I mean, the first episode he wrote, people love, but he publicly came out and said that Stephen Moffat basically rewrote it all for him and put in all the good lines, and that he really struggled. And the second time he said that it left a bad taste in his mouth, and that he didn't go the way he wanted it to. So if he's struggling that much, whether that's because of the execs he's bouncing off of or whatever, to write a single episode, I really don't want to see him try and write a whole series.
That's fair. That's fair.
But that's all I can do, really, is rule out other people's suggestions. Yeah, because
I know a lot of people have suggested from the Whittaker era. I've heard suggestions of I'm gonna get this wrong, but Pete is it McTighe?
Pete McTighe.
Sorry, Pete McTighe. Silent. Yeah. I've heard because I think he also works on the collection range of the classic Blu-ray, so he's a fan clearly, and I've heard Vinay Patel as well, which I actually be quite interested in myself, because I do like Vinay's not just his Who stuff. I've read some of the stage stuff he's done, and just other bit. I just really like his writing style, so I'd be open to that. But yeah, a lot of people. I think a lot of people are assuming it is going to be a writer from the current era, when I think it might not necessarily be. They could go completely left field.
It might not be an assumption so much as people don't know anyone else to suggest. That might, because it's in a more obvious place to go. If you look outside, it's very difficult to think of who it might be. I've seen suggestions of very famous showrunners. Charlie Webber, is that his name, that did Black Mirror?
Oh, is it Charlie Brooker? Yeah,
Charlie Brooker. I've seen that one come up a lot, and
was it Sally Wainwright was another one as well?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's probably out of all of the suggestions, that's the one I'd be most interested in seeing. But for me personally, there's no one that's obvious, that because there's such little science fiction TV that gets made in British TV
in Britain,
least, that there isn't really any other examples where you can go, oh well, they wrote Blake Seven, so let's have them write Doctor Who. There's nothing like that really anymore. So I really don't know. So my answer is me. Hire me.
There you go, BBC, if you're listening. But the last question to close off on this point, because I've seen this come up a lot on social media. I think it's an interesting point. In the Revival series exclusively, the three showrunners have been lifelong fans. You know, they've grown up with the show, they've loved the show, and they've helped bring it back. Do you think the showrunner, not the Doctor, I think that can go either way, but with the showrunner, do you think the showrunner needs to be an existing fan of the program, or do you think they can get someone who maybe has, a great back catalogue of stuff they've done, can easily make television, but isn't necessarily a Doctor Who fan? I don't mean that they hate it, but they're not like an avid viewer, so to speak. Where do you sort of sit on that?
I think exactly what you just said at the end. I was just going to say, you don't want to get someone in that doesn't like
that hates
Doctor
the show,
that thinks it's beneath them.
Yes.
That it's it's children's TV or it's cheap TV or whatever, because you will end up with a bad product, I think. But I don't see anything wrong with handing it to someone that's not a big fan of the show. I mean, if you look at the classic series, being a fan of the show wasn't really so much of a thing back then for an older person. You handed it over to another professional that was good at writing TV, and you gave them the show Bible and told them these are the things you meant to stick to, and they went and made Terrence Dicks or Robert Holmes or whoever took over and did a few years of the show. So I don't see anything wrong with just handing it over to a good TV writer and seeing what they can do with it.
I think in the classic series, John Nathan Turner was probably the closest to what you'd call a fan, probably because he'd worked on it before, and obviously he was very involved with like the convention stuff, and he knew a lot about the the lore of the show and the backstory. So I'd say he was probably the closest to what you'd call a fan. I don't think he considered himself that, but I certainly think all the other classic Who producers before him wouldn't have called themselves fans necessarily. So I think you're right. It just my view is very similar to yours. Just think if you've proven to make good television and you sort of relish the challenge of taking this on, then go for it. And I think it's the same with the Doctor. I think you don't have to have watched every single episode or even watched it as you were growing up. I think if you can prove that you can act and give a fresh take on this character, because I mean, was it the classic examples like Eccleston? He said he didn't really watch it. He saw like snippets when he was a kid.
Jodie as well.
Matt Smith and Jodie, but I guess they grew up in like the wilderness years mainly, so that's fair enough in a way. But I've never people can have their opinions, of course, but I've just never understood that argument of you must be a Doctor Who fan to be the Doctor or be the showrunner, because I just think you don't. It's the simplest answer to that.
For the Doctor, you definitely don't. I mean, you're an actor. You're given a script. You do the script. There's really no need to be a fan of the show. For the showrunner, I do understand the argument, because it is a very delicate thing that people will get very angry about.
If you get it wrong,
in terms of all the details of the show.
Yeah.
So, people get angry about it whether you get it wrong or not.
This is true. But I mean, I think with the internet now, though, like there's no excuse for not doing your research, I guess. If I was I'd like to think if I was a showrunner who didn't really know anything about the past and wanted to fact check something, I could do that. Do you know what I mean? Whereas maybe back in the old days, you'd literally need, as they did, like fans who knew and were there. But I'm curious to see who it is, though. We'll have to wait and see. As I say, sod's law. By the time this is out, it's probably all been announced, and
we should refresh Twitter right now.
We should refresh Twitter.
I'm just going to make sure.
You never know.
It hasn't popped up.
No,
we're good.
Well,
we're safe.
Folks who are listening, if by the time you're listening it's already out, I mean, I would say I'm sorry, but we're not. You've heard our takes anyway. We'll see if we're right. Well, before we start to round off the show today, with everyone I've been chatting with recently who's a Who fan, I'd like to ask 3 questions, which I've labelled as the 3 ones, because they all involve the word one in the title. So,
Sure.
the first one is called The One I Love. Now, this is the story that it doesn't necessarily have to be your all-time favourite, but it's a story that, you can go back to it time and time again. It doesn't grow stale. It feels just as fresh the first time you watched it. Or if you like, all the Who stories are burning, and you've got to save that one. So, any Doctor Who story, classic or modern, which is the one you love?
Well, I feel like you should go with the one that comes to mind, because that's the thing that's, in your heart. And 2 came to mind immediately, which is Partners in Crime.
Nice.
And The End of Time. Now,
okay.
I understand there's lots of people that hate The End of Time, but I don't really care. I also don't really understand why. End of Time makes me a lot more emotional, obviously, because of what happens. And to me, it is like the ultimate moment of Doctor Who. The whole ending sequence with the 4 knocks and everything after that is just the peak of Doctor Who, in my opinion. So you feel like, well, you have to say it's that one. But if we're talking about the one that I can just watch over and over and just always brings me comfort, I think I'd have to say the Partners in Crime. It's got to be Partners in Crime.
Good choice.
It's always funny, always heartwarming. It's really emotional and sad as well in lots of different places. You don't really remember until you watch it, because everyone thinks about the scene where they're at either side of the room and they're doing a little mime, and that's brilliant, but there's so much else in the story that you miss. For me, that's like the start of the perfect series of Doctor Who, so I think I'd have to say that one.
Good choice. And so you're right. I think that whole arc with Donna, there are a lot of sad moments that you forget until you rewatch it again. It's a very powerful story arc, so that's a solid choice, Partners in Crime. Okay, so the second one is called One and Done, which is pretty much the opposite. It's a story, you've seen it once, and you sort of think, I'm probably not going to watch that again unless I have to, or if it's for a video. Do you know what I mean? One that you don't think you'll revisit for a very, very long time.
That is a good question. My mind goes immediately to the classic series.
Sure.
If you find one you don't like in the modern series, you may watch it again because it's only 45 minutes. You might want to give it another go. If you find one you really don't like and it's 6 parts long, you're never going to touch it again.
Sure.
So my mind immediately goes to like the worst of the William Hartnell or Patrick Troutman era. Maybe the Web Planet. That comes to mind straight away.
Okay.
Some people really like it. I don't know what drugs they were on when they watched it. It's just a bunch of wasps flying around, men in wasp costumes flying around and making weird noises. There's a video on my channel called Doctor Who in the Web Planet. It's my worst video and I love it. If you want to look at my channel, just go and watch Doctor Who in the Web Planet. But anyway, it's there's probably a worse one than that, and there's probably a more boring one than that that I could pick. But off the top of my head, one I'm never going to watch again is Doctor Who in the Web Planet.
The Web Planet is just one of those where you sort of, you watch it and I go like, well, they tried, like they gave it a damn good go for 1965. But no, I get that. I know a lot of people find, especially like the Hartnell and Troughton stuff, the longer stuff, like you say, if it doesn't captivate them, then it loses them, which I do get. 60s TV was very different back then, I guess, as well, wasn't it? And it was meant to be watched, I guess, one a week rather than sat down and watched in a 2.5 hour binge, I guess. But no, that's fine. That's cool. The Web Planet it is.
I think the other thing I can say about it is, if you ask me now what actually happens, what's the plot? I cannot tell you a thing. Not a thing.
Oh, something to do with ants fighting butterflies or something like that.
Exactly, something like that.
Okay, I've noted that down. And finally, it's back to square one. And this is, you have a friend or an acquaintance who has never really watched Doctor Who before. They might know the show, but they've never seen an episode ever. So what story, again, classic or modern, are you going to be like, right, this is the first one I'm going to show you?
Well, I'm not showing them Classic Who to start off with. I don't want to scare them off. First thing.
We love Classic Who. So.
Oh, I love Classic Who.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of obvious points. The 11th Hour is the answer that everyone gives.
Sure.
But to me, that's not my favourite era of Doctor Who. So I don't know if I'd want to introduce someone to that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing. It's what you'd want to introduce someone to, not what like the general, consensus is. It's what you personally feel is the best, almost appropriate story, whatever it is, to introduce someone to this crazy little sci-fi world.
I'm tempted to say Rose.
Okay.
Because it's definitely not. It's not the strongest episode of series 1, let alone the strongest opener to show somebody. But because it's not that good, but it has some good bits in it. That's true of quite a lot of Doctor Who episodes, I think. So
sure, yeah.
It's all well and good trying to show the Midnight or Silence in the Library or something like that, but one that's quite heavy, Doctor Who, you need to already be into the show before you go and watch that. Absolutely. You don't want to waste like watching Midnight as the first ever episode of Doctor Who, because I think it loses its effect. But also, not every episode you're going to watch, if you're going to watch the show all the way through, is going to be as good as Midnight or Silence in the Library.
Yeah.
And then maybe they're going to tune out when they're disappointed that some of the episodes aren't as good later on. So I'd say get them to watch Rose. If you can watch Rose and go, that's fun, I want to watch the next episode, then you're going to enjoy the rest of Doctor Who. So I think Rose would be my
good
choice.
shout. Well, you got a real mix there. Partners in Crime, The Web Planet, and Rose. Ever thought we'd see a trio of those
What
together?
A marathon that is.
Oh, God. Could you imagine in that order as well? Blimey. Oh, well, thank you for your answers. I like hearing different, because again, everyone's got a different answer for these. Everyone's got different experiences and different answers. So thank you for sharing. But before we round off today, Lewis, just what can we expect from you from the future, both in your channel or just in terms of other projects you're working on? What's coming up?
Good question. Well, we spoke about the series that hopefully will be coming out, a comedy dramedy, as they like to be called.
Yes.
I like that term. It's going to be called Time and Space, and it should be a 6-part series starting with a pilot. It may be delayed a little bit because I am personally moving to university in like 2 days' time, which you can't see because I positioned the camera very well. This room is an absolute pigsty at the moment with cardboard boxes and all sorts. So because of that, there may be some moving back of it, but that will be coming out, and I think hopefully if people give it the time of day, that will be something really unique that people can get into. Otherwise, we'll be carrying on with the reaction videos, the Gallifrey Geeks game show. There's a 3rd episode in the can already to be uploaded at some point. And also when Series 13 comes out, I'm inevitably going to have stuff to say about that, so I'm sure there'll be some...
We all will.
Exactly. There'll be some reviews, hopefully no rants, hopefully positive reviews. But there'll be something about that on my channel. As for myself, I'm always writing, so I'm sure there'll be something, and maybe hang on for 8 to 15 years and you might see Lewis Leveret as Doctor Who showrunner.
Hey, I'm vouching for it, man. I believe it. I believe it. Just when you are showrunner, can I let me have a part, please? Preferably the leading part, but yeah, just anything. I'll be background monster number 5 if you want. But yeah,
you can be a Cyberman for me.
Oh yes, I'll be I'll put on me high heel boots so I can meet the height requirement. But yeah,
you have to flatten your hair as well for to fit in the cyber helmet.
Oh, that'll be a task in itself. That's that's for sure. Oh, hey, so you got lots going on, which is fantastic. And I mean, first and foremost, thank you so much, Lewis, for coming on AMTV Radio. It's been a blast chatting with you. But before we go, if you'd like to shout out any existing projects or your social medias, please feel free to do so.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great fun. I always like talking about Doctor Who, and I always like talking about myself. So you've ticked both boxes
tick
there for me. Well, what do I want to plug? Twitter @FerbOnWho, simple as that, and same on YouTube as well. New reaction video just came out. As I said, I think it's my favourite one that we've done so far. Also our longest one. It's practically the length of the episode, so you can just watch it like you're watching The Girl in the Fireplace. Nice. And watch it through with everybody. Other than that, I think that's about it. So just stay tuned for the new Doctor Who stuff, and yeah, hopefully you'll see me about. We have a Discord as well. You'll see that on the YouTube and on the Twitter. Go and join in if you want to have a chat about Doctor Who or whatever else.
Awesome. Awesome, lovely. Well, folks, you heard it there first. Go and check Lewis out on his social medias. Subscribe to him on YouTube, Ferb on Who. Go and follow him on Twitter, Ferb on Who as well. Wonderful. And if you'd like to keep up to date with this show, first of all, thank you for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe, leave us a like, let me know your feedback in the comments. We've got new episodes coming every week. If you're listening audio only, there's no way to leave comments, so you can either head to YouTube and do that, or let me know on Twitter. Just tag me, Adam Martyn AMTV. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. And all that needs to be said now is, once again, Lewis, mate, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been good fun.
Glad to hear it, no problem. And for all of you lot listening and watching, I'll see you next time.